This is your Daily 5 for Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. We've mentioned, and of course I said as part of the review for A Perfect Getaway, that we are doing a Milla March marathon of movies featuring Milla Jovovich, and as part of that, we are watching all the Resident Evil films that she starred in, 6 in all. Now, we've watched the first 3, we'll be talking about them on the show Friday, and honestly, what I have come to realize about those films is the one that I'm genuinely the most conflicted about is the second one, Resident Evil Apocalypse, which I cannot possibly call a good movie. It is not a good movie. It is very poorly directed, and it really just jumbles together different elements of the Resident Evil games in ways that don't make any sense to anybody who actually played them and remembers the stories. Now, you can make an argument that many people coming to these movies may never have played those games, and that's a fair perspective to bring to it, but it nonetheless is something that would be borderline, if not outright insulting to people who were familiar with the actual lore of the games as it existed within the classic version of them, because these are definitely even though they bring elements of the later games in, this is definitely operating within the classic version for the most part, at least the first 3 of the Resident Evil games. And as I said, I'm conflicted on Apocalypse, which is the second one, because I actually appreciate the fact that Nemesis is not a CG effect, that Nemesis is in fact a person in a suit, that they attempted to do that, because at that time, certainly if you look at other effects in the movie and the first one, there's some terrible, terrible CG that's at work there. And so it would have been easier, I would guess, to just make a CG Nemesis. And I can only imagine how bad that would have looked. And maybe they did attempt it and realized it just was unacceptable. Although based on the way the liquor works, I'm not sure anything in this movie was deemed unacceptable CG-wise. There's so much bad CG throughout these films, and it will only get worse as we go on. But like I said, I like Nemesis, and I think to a certain point, Nemesis actually feels like the enemy from the game, and that's my favorite villain from the Resident Evil games. In fact, Resident Evil 3 is my favorite game because of Nemesis. And so as somebody who likes the Nemesis game, the Resident Evil 3 Nemesis video game, the original one and the remake, frankly, I know people get upset at how truncated it is, but still, it looks great. Although I ironically don't like the redesign of Nemesis all that much. He still looks better, I guess. That's a whole separate 5. But for the movie, I think what frustrates me about it is there are these moments where you see the potential that the second movie could have had. And then it almost immediately is flushed through a combination of poor storytelling and really terrible direction. And, you know, when you read some of the background material on this, where Milla was doing a lot of work to do her stunts and clearly is very physically capable. In fact, I think Lando made mention in the commentary that this is probably the most fit Milla looks through all these movies. She looks in the best shape. And from what I've read about what she was doing a lot of physical training and workout routines to try to be able to do most of her own stunts. But then the direction does nothing to serve those action scenes. And the Jill Valentine character, I don't remember the actress, Sienna something, I can't remember the last name. She studied the games to try to move like Jill Valentine did in the video games. And so she does all this work, and then they don't do anything with the character. They just basically flush that character's potential again. The minute you see all these glimpses of goodness, they're immediately wasted, but with a combination of the direction, which is just not good. It just flatly is not good. And the storytelling, which is a mess. And so it's a movie where I look at it, and unlike the later films, which are just garbage. I mean, we're going to watch them, but they're garbage. Anything after the third film is just, you can't really recommend it to anybody who's not into bad films. But you could just see that they kind of gave up on those movies and didn't even bother. But in 2, there's definitely these glimmers of effort. There's these moments that shine through where you think this movie could have been so much better than it was. And that's actually, to me, worse. That's what makes me conflicted about it, where I want to just completely dismiss it, but I really can't, because there are these moments where I sit there and go, Nemesis moving around in this one scene looks really good. I like the fact that it's a physical person. And the woman playing Jill Valentine looks like Jill Valentine. You know, maybe not geared correctly for an apocalypse, but she's moving correctly, and she probably could have been used better. But again, instead, the primary drivers of the film, the direction and the narrative, the storytelling, just completely wasted. It's really, and that's why it's got this weird place for me, where while I recognize it isn't good, it could have been. And that is almost worse than it having been bad. Later.